How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sunday, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. Well, it's Friday here on the show, and you know what that means? Well, it means it's Friday. So we're going to talk about all of the news in pro wrestling and mixed martial arts heading into the weekend here. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and unfortunately, the top story today is one of those stories I hate having to talk about here. Don West, the iconic pitchman who served as one of the voices of TNA wrestling, has passed away following a battle with cancer. West's passing was announced by his former broadcast partner Mike Tenay on Friday. Don West was 59 years old. Tenay wrote, "Just heard from wife Terry that our brother will be spending New Year's in heaven." Terry said D-Dub finally had to tap out from his match with lymphoma. "We bonded as soon as we met, both as broadcast partners and friends. Years of great moments, both on and off camera." He announced in June of 2021 he had been diagnosed with brain lymphoma, went into remission after undergoing chemotherapy and radiation treatment. Cancer returned. West began a second battle with the disease last December. Part of the commentary team for TNA 2002 to 2012, worked in the company's merchandise department as well. Returned in 2017 to call the Slammiversary pay-per-view. Outside of wrestling, he is best known for his time as a sports collectibles pitchman on the Shop at Home Network. West and the Shop at Home Network were even parodied on Saturday Night Live in the 90s. Radio host, he worked for News Radio 560 KPQ in the state of Washington. And Tenay shared on December 17th he got to FaceTime with West, and Tenay called it the best Christmas gift he could get. So all the best to the friends and family of Don West. I loved listening to Don West in TNA, and we could talk a little bit more about that when we come back from the break. And also notes on Dragon Lee, Bray Wyatt, injuries, perhaps to AJ Styles as well. We've got Dynamite and NXT numbers. Lots of time for feedback today. 425-780-7566 is the number. That is 425-780-7566. Back in a moment with more Wrestling Observer Live.
It's time to play Which Movie Did Dave Batista Say This Line In? Quote number 1, "I like your knife, I'm keeping it." Did Batista say this in A, Army of the Dead, B, Stuber, C, Dune, or D, Guardians of the Galaxy? He said this particular quote on Guardians of the Galaxy. Quote number 2, "I think I broke something deep inside." Did he say this line on My Spy, Guardians of the Galaxy, Final Score, or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Batista had this line on My Spy. Quote number 3, "It's a baby gun. It allows you to fire it while crying." Did Batista say this line in A, Kickboxer Vengeance, B, Stuber, C, Final Score, or D, Army of Thieves? He had this line on Stuber. Quote number 4, "I've mastered the ability of standing so incredibly still that I become invisible to the eye." In which film did Dave Batista say this quote? A, Guardians of the Galaxy, B, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, C, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or D, Thor, Love and Thunder? He actually said this line on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Quote number 5. If it's a choice between dying on the strip and spending another day flipping patties at the Lucky Boy, I'll gamble on a few million. Did Batista say this particular quote in A, Bushwick, B, Riddick, C, Heist, or D, Army of the Dead? He actually said this quote on Army of the Dead. That's it for this trivia game. Thank you guys for playing. I will catch you on the next commercial break. But in the meantime, let's get back to Wrestling Observer Live.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. You know who Don West reminded me of in some ways?
Who's that?
My main man, David Crockett. Because, Don West started and he wasn't like a wrestling guy. He was a guy brought in, he was a hype man, and he did commentary on those early TNA shows. And a lot of people early on didn't like Don West because it was like, this guy, where did he come from and this and that. But you know what? You know what Don West had? He had an incredible amount of passion. And man, he called those shows like he was having the time of his life. And, in WWE, sometimes, not so much now, but back in the day when Vince yelled at guys, you'd have these commentators that they were pretending to have the time of their life. But for various reasons, they probably wouldn't. And you didn't really believe that they were having the time of their lives. Or when, they do some stupid comedy and then Michael Cole go, ha, 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 ha. And you're like, this guy doesn't think that's funny. He's pretending to laugh. Not for 1 second did you ever think that Don West was pretending to be excited. This dude was so excited. And David Crockett was the same way. A lot of people did not like David Crockett as announcer. I love this guy because he called those matches, and he had so much fun. You know what he reminds me of in a different sort of way?
Who?
Is Tony Schiavone nowadays. You hear Tony Schiavone on commentary, and there's a guy who's just having fun. And he'll see a match that he likes, and he'll mark out for it. That's what I like in my announcers. I would like them to obviously be, but you've got a team. There's a guy that should know everything about wrestling, your Excalibur, and then you've got some dude that does color. Sometimes you have like 8 dudes in a booth or whatever. But there is a place for a Don West whose job is to be excited and make you excited for what you're watching here on this show. And man, that was Don West. And then he would do those segments where he was selling merch. It was like, I watch all these commercials, and, sometimes there'll be a Raw commercial, and it'll be Christmas time, and, the New Day is trying to hawk some merch or whatever, and it's, disguised as a backstage segment, but it's really selling stuff. And nothing against the New Day, but, that's fast-forward material. I'm not gonna buy any of this stuff. But, man, Don West would get going, and you just had to watch it, because he would be selling you on the most preposterous stuff. Why would I want a Jeff Jarrett foam guitar? I don't! But by the time Don West was done, I kind of thought about busting out that credit card. So, man, sad to hear Don West go. It sucks. Is everyone here on the chat's noting cancer sucks? All the best to his friends and family, and sad day here.
What a pro. What a pro, and what enthusiasm he had, and the charisma, just the natural selling ability that he had. I retweeted a clip of him overnight selling Beanie Babies, and if you're of a certain age and you were up late at night, possibly in a really, really good mood, and these shows would come on with him hawking stuff, mostly it was sports memorabilia, but then in this case it was Beanie Babies. It just was incredible, and he brought that same thing, and he was the perfect counterbalance to Mike Tenay, who was so dead serious. And you had this new guy, and they didn't make any bones about that. He's a new announcer. I'm here. I'm happy. Go Red, go. Like, he was legitimately, I believe, and I believe this to be true, that he was amazed watching Amazing Red and got that excited over the stuff. And I thought he was so, so great. And I mean, There's a story about his introduction, or one of his introductions into the wrestling business, and I'm not sure how linked to it he was before he got going with Impact and TNA, but when they were doing the test run for announcers at Burt Prentice's Nashville show, and that's where, obviously, at the fairgrounds, that's where TNA first started, and they were doing the test announcing in the back of the building, and Jim Cornette happened to be there. And when TNA first started, not only was it Mike Tenay and Don West, but it was also Ed Ferrara. And so he got to see Jim Cornette and Ed Ferrara get into it, with Cornette spitting in Ferrara's eye about his mockery of Jim Ross. And I always wondered, it's like, I don't know if Don West thought that was the greatest thing or the worst thing in the world, but there's your introduction into wrestling. And from there, what he did with TNA was great. I thought the heel turn, as goofy as it was perfectly timed. And I thought they really reinvigorated him, making him a character on the show. And then that got into more of him just selling the merchandise, like Brian mentioned, which that was his natural thing. He was just great.
Person says Pat McAfee comes the closest to Don Energy. Yeah, he's sort of,
he does.
But
he does.
he's no Don West, but he's closer than many. And you know who else is? And no one's gonna agree with this because nobody actually watches NXT except me. Booker T.
Great enthusiasm.
This guy,
yes.
Holy smokes,
he's having fun.
he's also got the wrestling aspect. So, you know, Booker T. A couple of weeks ago, they had him do a sit down interview with what's her name? Roxanne.
Roxy.
And he did a great job because he actually trained her. And he was actually very emotional when she won the NXT title. So he was a great person to do that job. But man, this guy, you know, the first day or two that he did commentary, he was kind of subdued and everything like that. But from that point forward, like,
He sounds like he's smoking woolly blunts right before he goes on, and he's having the time of his life. But he is
having the time of his life.
I think Booker and McAfee, because McAfee's got a brand. He was already something coming into this, and even though his enthusiasm is real, and I believe him, and the same thing with Booker T, I think Don West is different because I think that he never stepped out of, and even when they forced him into, you know, more of a role being adversarial to Mike Tenay, he was always that guy, us. He was the fan. He was the guy that got dropped into the situation, and I guess in some ways, yes, he was playing Don West while he was doing it, but there was something much more approachable to him, and it was something that I really, really wished that ROH was going to get out of Mike Hogwood with Dave Perezak, and unfortunately that never ended up happening, but we did get Slap the Porpoise out of it.
I didn't like the hog. Hogwood.
Well, he sort of tried. Well, no, there's stories for another day.
This person here says, as somebody who grew up watching those crappy TNA shows in the 2000s, Don West was so amazing, and him paired with Mike today was a great duo showing their awe and passion. There was definitely a lot of awe to be seen in those early TNA shows, let me tell you.
Yes.
Their awe and passion for pro wrestling, rest in peace, Don West. Yeah, him and Tenay were great. They were a great duo. Because they were friends. They were friends in this crazy business.
And man, how nice was that for the longest time? You didn't have to have announcers jawing with each other because that became the thing. And that's one of the things I don't like about Corey Graves. I know it's in his ear to go ahead and do that, but like, he's really good when he's toned down and just normal. You know, he and Paquette, when they were on together, it's like they were so normal. It was great. It was conversational. It wasn't as wacky as I love Taz and Shivani and all them, but sometimes I think maybe they're laughing sometimes a little bit too much, but like they were, I guess, were too calm. So they had to fire it up. And you didn't get that with West and Tenay for the longest time. It was just two guys calling a version of pro wrestling. I was going to say pro wrestling, but I mean, there was the Dupps and the Johnsons and the Flying Elvises and Cheeks. Look that one up.
This person says, watching TNA as a kid, tells you how old we are. Watching TNA as a kid was listening to Mike today explain all the stories, and then brace yourself for Don West to scream at the top of his lungs with such enthusiasm, it almost forced you to keep watching to see more. can send your feedback to 425-780-7566. Brian at WrestlingObserver.com. I'm sure we could talk about Don West all day. Just learned of Don West passing due to his show today. Don West sold me on buying so much stuff at TNA shows over the years when I was younger. For better or worse, he was the voice of TNA wrestling, which says a lot when you have Professor Mike as the guy opposite you. And also here, Don West wasn't going to win any awards for announcing, but nobody has ever been as enthusiastic about the product than him. Back in a moment with more Observer Live.
It's time to play Which Movie Did John Cena Say This Line In? Quote number 1. It's not a toilet seat, it's a beacon of freedom. In which movie did John Cena say this line? A. The Suicide Squad. B. F9 The Fast Saga. C. Bumblebee. Or D. The Marine. John Cena said this line on The Suicide Squad. Quote number 2. I used to hold that girl in the palm of my hand. Did he say this in A. Daddy's Home, B. Daddy's Home 2, C. Ferdinand, D. Blockers? John Cena said this line on the movie Blockers. Quote number 3. Nothing like a bloodbath to start the day. Did John Cena say this in A. Blockers, B. The Suicide Squad, C. The Marine, or D. 12 Rounds? John Cena said this quote on The Suicide Squad. Quote number 4. Mark Wahlberg is like 150 pounds. I'm 250 lean. I look like Mark Wahlberg ate Mark Wahlberg. Did John Cena say this line in A. Blockers, B. Trainwreck, C. Vacation Friends, or D. Daddy's Home? This line was said by John Cena on Trainwreck. Quote number 5. Stop that couple, they have a bomb. Did John Cena say this in A. Vacation Friends, B. Blockers, C. Trainwreck, or D. F9 The Fast Saga? John Cena said this line on Vacation Friends. That's it for this trivia game. Thank you guys for playing. I will catch you on the next commercial break. But in the meantime, let's get back to Wrestling Observer Live.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also WrestlingObserver.com. I Moxley'd myself.
You all right?
Busting myself open with the headphones. I'm trying to put them on.
Wait
Literally drew blood.
You hard-weighed yourself with the headphones?
Well, I tried to lift them up to my head, and they got caught on something here, and
Wait
then
a
it
second.
yanked off and banged me in the face.
Hold on. A little bit ago, after the very first short
That's what
segment,
happened. That's when it was.
You went into a room with screaming kids, and I'm betting Hanalei put hands on you, and she knocked your butt back into that room to get back to recording again.
Headphones. It was headphones. I'd have told you if she busted me open. Didn't happen.
Can't wait till
Where
Tom
it says,
busts you open when he comes back. Tell you that.
Rest in peace. We're talking about Don here, not Tom.
I know.
Rest in peace, Don West, a man whose energy was truly infectious. He was the man they named Panda Energy after. Did you know that? That's a lie.
You know what? Good. I believe it now.
Regardless
I believe it.
of if his words were on the money, he always made you feel the same excitement he felt watching pro wrestlers do amazing things. He felt like a fan in the booth while still keeping a professional's composure. Somebody here mentioned another guy with a lot of energy, obviously, Mauro Ranallo. That's true. That's true. Do you know when I first heard Mauro Ranallo, I thought he was horrible. Are you aware of this?
No.
I watched a show that he was calling decades ago, and man, I buried Mauro Ranallo. And the reason was, here's the thing with Mauro Ranallo, which is ironic because I'm sure people say the same thing about me. I heard him, and it just felt like he was, doing a gimmick, like he was
Yelling
putting
at
on
me.
a voice or some shtick or something like that. And then as the years went on, and then later I met Mauro Ranallo, I realized, wait a second, that's actually Mauro Ranallo.
That's the
and
pain
so
I've
then,
discovered about you.
Then you realize, wait a second, this is not some gimmick. And then you realize that in fact he's just a very boisterous man.
He is. He was. It was another. Michael Chavallo was like that too, although I didn't really like him at all. And here's my tie-in to Mauro is, I hate to say this, but when I first heard of him, because I was so used to boxing announcers, especially good ones over the years, your Jim Lampley's and your Bob Papas and Tim Ryans and so many from over the years, I heard Boss Rutan do Pride, and I hated him at first. I hated him, but I also didn't understand the sport as well, too. And it was like, and his charisma, and it didn't take long before he grew on me. And then to me, one of probably the best announcing team for the time. And hey, there was Tenay and West and lots of others, but Mauro Ranallo and Boss Rutan were fantastic together. Quadros was before him as well, too, but they were both excellent as well. And talking, again, great enthusiasm, selling you on what was taking place. It was great.
Rip Don West, a man whose energy was truly infectious. Regardless of if his words were on the money, he always made you feel the same excitement he felt watching pro wrestlers do amazing things. He felt like a fan in the booth while still keeping a professional's composure.
That's it. That's the biggest thing. He felt like the fan watching at home. And man, if you were the fan spending $9.95 at the time, for a long time at the very beginning of that show, I mean, he was one of the things, at least, you got out of the show that was good sometimes week after week. Things changed a little bit when they got to actual television, but again, that's one of the greatest things about him was he just felt like the everyman, and that's why David Crockett was also very successful as well, too, because he was the brother of the promoter. Everybody knew it. He was never a wrestler. He tried, and the boys know that he failed, but, fans didn't really realize that was him way back in the day when having his one match. So they just knew him as the brother of the promoter who was really, invested with what was going on and offered, a little bit of the fans' voice of what was taking place.
Says Rip Don West. Early days, NWA TNA was definitely hit and miss. But damn if Don didn't sell everything with the utmost enthusiasm and energy. My favorite Don West story was Tenay sarcastically reading a PW Torch copy that was ripping on TNA. Good thing he didn't find a figure 4. And everyone else was chuckling, but Don got super pissed off, which led me to believe that he may not have been entirely aware that wrestling is a work. Well, of course he was, but he was a passionate man.
But the fact that he
West
would put that on, that's what was awesome. Again, just everything he saw blew his ever-loving mind, and it was the best. And again, Tony Schiavone in some ways right now with what some of these guys do, and he actually is doing the same thing.
This person here says, I appreciate your perspective on Dragon Lee. Since you are a wrestler, I wish more people were happy for this guy. He deserves to be making some money.
Jesus.
That's the whole point of the wrestling business, isn't it? Sometimes fans think too selfishly about their personal enjoyment over the livelihood of the talent. I'm not fighting the fight. This guy agrees with me. Which brings me, by the way, to an update from the New Observer. More details are available regarding Dragon Lee's contract with WWE. Lee announced he had signed with the company during the AAA event on Wednesday. 27-year-old earmarked for NXT. Dave Meltzer addressed the signing in The Observer, noted AEW also made an offer to Lee. The deal he signed with WWE is for 3 years, and the financial terms are, quote, above the standard NXT level money. And we can also note that he is the second highest paid person in NXT right now, behind Apollo Crews, who I guess counts, but I mean, that's a main roster guy making main roster money that got sent down there. So as far as people on a developmental deal, I guess that would mean that Dragon Lee is making more money than anybody at NXT. WWE contracts typically have a confidentiality clause that prevents talent from stating publicly how much they are being paid. Lee would receive a new contract if he's called up for the main roster. Bottom number for main roster contracts, $250,000. So for those of you, we were talking yesterday about Cameron Grimes and Legado del Fantasma, all three of them, and, well, they're making good money now.
Well, they always were making pretty good money, I don't care what anybody says about the low NXT deals. Yes, sometimes you can make more elsewhere, but for some people, that good, steady income is reliable, and they're happy about that. But I'd like to be the voice of reason on this once again, because not everyone is fighting the same fight when it comes to Dragon Lee, where you can be happy that this guy's making money and still have trepidation as a fan because of WWE's reputation. Now, I think those people, that makes sense, but they ought to also, let's give Triple H a little bit of rope here to hang himself and see how long it takes, and if he's able to actually build a superstar in a mask, that's not Rey Mysterio. Holy crap, boy, that would be a great thing. And in fact, if you could do it by, I don't know, Los Angeles, and obviously he probably won't be up on the roster by then, but that weekend you can surely feature him and surely get a lot of mileage out of him. Let's give that guy some time. Let's give him till WrestleMania and see what happens with Dragon Lee.
Hey, I got an idea for everybody.
What's that?
How about,
what's that?
Since this is the last show of 2022, how about this?
So
remind me of this, everybody.
All right.
In 1 year's time, on this show, why, let's look back and let's determine in 1 year's time who had a better 2023, Bandito, who just got signed to AEW, or Dragon Lee, who just got signed to WWE. Would that not be fair?
I don't. You know what? Yes, it would be
I think
fair.
that's fair.
That's fair. Plus, it gave us content for 1 year from now.
That's right. I'm always looking for content for a year from now because I'm a long-term booker.
You are.
I don't want to make fun of anybody that gets hurt. But when I heard that Bray Wyatt may have suffered a broken finger, I will not lie that my first question was, how? Well, it turns out that he returned to the ring. He returned at a WWE house show in Miami on Thursday evening. Do you know who he wrestled, Mike? Do you know who Bray Wyatt's first match back was against in Miami, Florida, yesterday evening?
Oh, God. I actually read that result, and I can't recall who it is, to be honest with you. Chad Gable? It wasn't, but who was it?
Jinder Mahal.
There we go. Jinder.
Bray Wyatt versus Jinder Mahal.
Sure.
Who's going to have a better year in 2023, Bray Wyatt or Dragon Lee? Well, anyway, he told Ringsiders he may have broken his finger afterwards, so hopefully he's all right. And then, I don't have an update, but AJ Styles also, he was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, so apparently they did split tours on Tuesday night.
Chocolate capital of the world.
Styles did a spot over the top rope to the outside, resulted in him grabbing his left ankle and leg. The ref threw up the X sign to indicate there was a problem. The match was stopped. Gallows and Henderson helped him to the back. So all the best to AJ. I don't like to see anybody hurt.
I wonder if they're going to carry him right back on a plane to Tokyo.
AJ?
Yeah. Shinsuke's there.
I don't think AJ is going to go to Tokyo
know.
with a bad leg.
How bad is that leg?
I don't know. That's the thing. Here's the finger. With a finger, you tape the finger and you keep working. With the knee, with the ankle.
Somebody might be working. I don't know. I hope he's okay. I hope
You're telling me the
everything's
house
fine.
show they stopped a match that they had
I don't know.
advertised and everybody paid to see to do a worked leg injury? No.
I don't know.
No. The guy's 45 years old doing high spots, dude. It catches up to everybody. I'll be the first guy to tell you. It
Yeah,
catches
I know. You
up
tapped
to
out
you.
to Tom.
No, it caught up to me before the match even started. I went in injured. It's one of the problems.
You had
one of the
your-
reasons I was hurt.
Caretaker with you.
Hey, you get out of here. We're going to be back after a break. Observer Live.
All right, movie lovers, we are back with some more trivia. Which movie did The Rock say this line in? Part 2. Quote number 1. This is a video game, which means we have special skills. Did The Rock say this in A, Central Intelligence, B, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, C, Jumanji The Next Level, or D, Jungle Cruise? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said this in Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Quote number 2. I'm a good guy, but sometimes I do bad things. Did he say this in A, Red Notice, B, Baywatch, C, Black Adam, or D, The Fate of the Furious? The answer we were looking for is Red Notice. Quote number 3. I'm what you call an ice-cold can of whoop ass. Did The Rock say this in A, Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw, B, Fast and Furious 6, C, Furious 7, or D, Pain and Gain? He said this quote on Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. Quote number 4. What are you talking about? I just passed my driver's test last month again. Did he say this in A, Jumanji The Next Level, B, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, C, The Game Plan, or D, The Tooth Fairy? The Rock said this line on Jumanji The Next Level. Quote number 5. But camels are smarter. Did Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson say this quote on The Scorpion King, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, or The Mummy Returns? He said this particular quote on The Scorpion King. Let's get back to Wrestling Observer Live. Enjoy, everyone.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. First says, I went to StarCast in 2019. I think I did too, actually. Don West was there at the gimmick table. He was able to sell the mic flag from CM Punk's pipe bomb promo for hundreds of dollars cash on the spot. He was incredible. I was so captivated by his energy. Where did they get that? And how do we know it was the actual one?
Who cares?
Well,
He
luckily
sold
I
it anyway.
trust old Don. Yeah, he could have sold a fake one for hundreds.
And you'd be happy about it because, damn it, Don West sold it to you. He talked you into thinking that was the thing. Man could sell ice to an Eskimo or whatnot, whatever it is. Sand to somebody on the beach.
First says, if you remember, the very first time we ever got a Bray Wyatt White Rabbit tease was at a random house show. Nobody knew what was going on with Jefferson Airplane started playing. Triple H might be thinking outside the box. He knows that everything will be picked up by the wrestling news websites. For what? Did he broke his finger? How is this a White Rabbit tease? Here's a tease. He wrestled a horrible wrestler, hurt himself.
Maybe
that'll get him over.
Maybe
wait till the dirt sheets get that news.
The gimmick went off on the screen and everything. He was like, and just started grabbing his finger. Maybe that's what happened. That's apparently not what happened, but I guess some people can believe that. I just hope this doesn't keep him out the same amount of time as it kept out Indus Sher. It was Veer Mahan who broke his finger. He was in the protocol for several weeks after that. Had to make sure he was going to be okay for the Indian show that's not happening now.
First says, I remember when I was 10 years old. The first time I watched Don West, he was selling some baseball cards. I became a fan. Then seeing him in TNA was so cool. An outsider that came into the scene and made you feel one of a kind. Rest in peace, Don West. And Marcelo here says, as a guy who was not a huge TNA fan, we didn't have a lot of huge TNA fans. That was the problem. But as a guy who was not a huge TNA fan, Don was incredibly infectious in his enthusiasm and was such a perfect piece with TNA. I loved when he and TNA were in the parking lot talking when the building caught fire on a pay-per-view. May he rest well. Maybe one of these days, we'll go back and watch all those TNA shows again. But
oh boy,
I think Vinny would have to retire first because he ain't doing it willingly.
The depth of TNA, people were asking you to write it for years, and even though they didn't die, you could do the Asylum years if you wanted to.
Let me tell you something, everybody. Let me tell you something.
What's that?
I wrote the death of WCW with R.D. Reynolds.
Heard that.
Big shout out to R.D. He's been sick, but I think he's feeling better. But I did Death of WCW with R.D., and it did great. Then we did a revised and expanded edition of Death of WCW, and it did great. Then I did an audiobook of the Death of WCW, and it did great. Are you aware that I have sold over 100,000 books in my lifetime? 100,000. By the way, have I gotten a plaque for that? Have I got any sort of thing to put on my wall? No.
It ain't trickled down either.
But at least I got to put something in my wallet. But here's the point. So I wrote these books, and everybody said, you've got to write The Death of TNA. I heard this for years and years and years and years. Well, two things. Number one, TNA is currently still not dead. Okay?
May never
and number
be.
two, this is the reason I never wanted to write The Death of TNA. Because I don't know if you guys watch TNA, but you know what TNA was famous for? They were famous for being a pro wrestling company with a product that their fans would not pay for. They would do their 1.1 million viewers and whatever rating on every single week without fail, 1.1 million. It was a comedy. But the issue was nobody paid. Nobody paid for tickets in large numbers. Nobody paid for pay-per-views in large numbers. Nobody paid for anything in large numbers. Unless Don West was selling a pipe bomb mic flag or whatever.
The only thing paid in large numbers were Dixie to the wrestlers.
So unlike those of you that don't understand this thing with Dragon Lee, I'm not writing a book just to write it. I'm either going to make that cheddar or I ain't going to write the book. And I said, if I write Death of TNA, no one's going to buy this book. Okay? Well, then I was approached to write another book. 100 things that WWE fans should know and do before they die. I said, sure, I'll write that book. WCW or WWE book. It's WWE.
You hoeing.
No. Now listen. I would not say that the book did poorly, okay? But it did nowhere near what Death of WCW did. And why? Well, I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but this WWE, it went off a cliff in the fall of 2018, and it was years before it stabilized and began to slowly recover a little bit. Do you guys want to go back and look at like the year over year, 2016 to 2017, 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020? We would be going like, they've dropped 45% of their 18 to 49 audience. These numbers were staggering. The collapse of this company during that period. Well, that's when I decided to write a book. I didn't decide, but I agreed to write a book about WWE during that period. And you'll never guess what happened. It didn't do very well. So I'm telling you right now, if I write a book about the death of TNA, I will be wasting my time. Nobody's going to buy the book. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm telling you.
When did you write Death of WCW first time around?
2004.
2004, okay? Forget about since 2018 and WWE's business dropping off a cliff. Look at the overall number of wrestling fans that has shrunk since that book first came out. And at least you had years of stuff in there to talk about and make fun of and analyze and the whole 9 yards that people were willing to buy because it was a lot of people's favorite wrestling promotion. They had a lot of time devoted to it. They were huge wrestling fans, and there were a lot more of them. The revised edition comes out. Again, I don't know how that did in comparison to the first time around, but again, it was playing off a lot of nostalgia and all that stuff, and again, new stuff added to it, all that cool. Again, you were playing to an audience that was different. As you mentioned about Impact's or TNA's audience, they wouldn't buy anything, and there's not a whole lot of reverence for that product. So it's like, how do you write this book? If you write it, it's almost like RD should probably do a book first, dip the toe in the water of just wrestle crap stuff from Impact, and if that jars people into really wanting something to come back, then maybe people will be knocking down ECW Press's doors, but I tend to doubt it, and you're probably right.
Well, the thing with WCW is they were dead, but I was writing about the Monday Night Wars, essentially.
Yeah.
Do you know how many new fans were created in the Monday Night Wars? Millions of them. There were 10 million people watching Raw and Nitro head-to-head at the peak of the month. 10 million people.
They shook
So,
up
yeah,
the
that's
NFL.
a book people are going to want to read.
Now we talk about what WWE, trying to avoid the NFL at all costs, and we lived through them trying to counter-program themselves at different times with the NFL, with halftime and stuff. That was the one moment in time where the NFL was pissed and they didn't get what was going on because there were a bunch of people that actually were getting far more entertainment out of watching one of those two shows or flipping back and forth than actually on Monday night. Obviously, the numbers, you got to balance them for what they were, but that was a great time for wrestling because they didn't care about. That's the one great thing. There's a lot to look back on and not like about the Monday Night Wars, but one thing is for sure, they threw everything at the wall and they didn't care about anything else that seemed to be on TV. They were just doing theirs.
Hey, speaking of ratings.
What's that?
Well, I believe the World Cup bump has ended. People have watched, and now they're getting back into the normal swing of things.
The holiday
Dynamite.
malaise.
Yeah, Dynamite did, I don't know what it did.
876 or something like that. Whatever it is, people are going to be bitching, whining, and moaning about it. But the reality is...
Do I have to go to my own Twitter to find out the number?
I don't think people should be freaking out about any of these numbers this week.
It's nothing to freak out about.
No,
these people
silly.
have just got to... These are just numbers, dude. Everything's fine. 876 and a .28. So it was second lowest 18 to 49 since October. And down in all demos, biggest drop, males 12 to 34 for some reason. And then NXT also did not do well. 588,000, down 17% from last week. Second lowest number since July 12th. It says here they had stronger than usual sports competition, but I don't buy that for a second because NXT is never affected by anything else that happens. It's only affected by whether or not people want to watch a show or not. So 25th on the charts, .12 rating. Those are your numbers for this week.
And
usually January, everything starts to turn around for all companies, so we'll see how it goes.
For all anybody says about anything, Dynamite, the average viewership in 2022, 955,711. That's up over 7% from last year. And the key demo rating, flat with last year. NXT, 623,461. 623,461, down 6.36%. And the key demo rating, 0.14, down from 0.16. So, again, not really even that dramatic a drop for them. So everything was actually par, at least you can say, if not a little bit better.
All righty. Well, what else do we have here in the bin? 425-780-7566 if you want to talk about Don West or Dragon Lee, whatever you want to talk about. Says guys like Dragon Lee going to WWE means more new guys get better opportunities in other promotions. Would Dragon Lee be as big a deal if guys like Mystico, Sombra, Dos Caras Jr., etc. didn't go to WWE? Be glad Lee is making money, and we have more chances to see new guys become stars.
I think that's what people are saying, though, is he won't get that chance, or they'll botch it because.
Well, of course, that's what they think. They no one will ever get a chance in WWE again. Seems to be the current mindset. But you know what? People will.
Yeah.
And like I said, the biggest problem with AEW right now is so many people not getting opportunities. For every Santos Escobar that DJ brings up right here, I mean, I've got Bandito. Where did Bandito go?
I know.
Takeshita's back in Japan right now.
Well,
I mean, you want me to go through this list?
Takeshita should be back in Japan right now. Again, that's the blessing and the curse of having him. He's going to have to go back and do some big things for DDT, as is the case right now for everybody in Japan. So, that's one thing. When he comes back, we'll see what happens with him. And frankly, as long as Bandito's not out for a long time and comes in with a plan for him with real feuds and actually some things thought out, okay, I'll take it. But when he does hit, let's see it happen. Don't just do it.
Versus bringing up Dominic. You tell me that Dominic's not doing well in WWE right now? Yes, he is. He's doing way better than Dominic Mysterio should be doing right now. And he's doing way better than he was doing as a geek son in a tag team with his father.
Did Rhea bail him out? Or did Finn? Did anybody? Do we know this?
I mean, someone must have bailed him out.
I hope so. He wasn't, by his own admission, wasn't going to last in there.
You heard me. Geek son. That was his gimmick. His gimmick was a geek son. He's better off now. Back in a moment with more Observer Live.
For all you movie buffs out there, it's time to play Which Movie Did The Rock Say This Line In? Part 1. Quote number 1. I may be a king, but I'm a wrestler first. Did The Rock say this in A, The Mummy Returns, B, The Scorpion King, C, Race to Witch Mountain, or D, Red Notice? This quote was said in The Scorpion King. Quote number 2. When I'm a guest in another man's house, I don't reach into his refrigerator without asking permission. Did The Rock say this in A, The Rundown, B, Be Cool, C, Walking Tall, or D, Gridiron Gang? The answer we were looking for is The Rundown. Quote number 3. Is it gonna be like this forever? Killing each other because you were born 5 blocks in the wrong direction? Did he say this in A, Doom, B, The Game Plan, C, Get Smart, or D, Gridiron Gang? The Rock said this particular quote in Gridiron Gang. Quote number 4. My gut says there's some bad shit going on over there, and my balls say we need to go over there and check it out. Did he say this in A, Central Intelligence, B, Baywatch, C, The Fate of the Furious, or D, Ballers? He said this line on Baywatch. Quote number 5. You don't get abs like these eating peanut butter patties. Did The Rock say this in A, Baywatch, B, Central Intelligence, C, The Game Plan, or D, Red Notice? The answer we were looking for is The Game Plan. I hope you guys had a good time playing this new game. I will be back with some more just like this one. But in the meantime, let's get back to Wrestling Observer Live. Enjoy, everyone.
I'm not sure we can get through all of this, but I got to try to play Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day. What is this? Friday, noon Pacific 3. Why am I playing? 3 Pacific 6 Eastern. Well, it's Friday. Hey, can you hear me, everybody?
Well, it's Friday.
Mike?
You know what that means.
You know that means something's got to screw up, but let's play this to turn it all around. Here we go.
All right, let's go.
You're going to believe it next week. I mean, we're going to have the greatest show you've ever seen. First off, we have just found out we're going to have the triple threat. That's right, the X Division, the triple threat. Low-key, AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn, all three go at it for the X Division title. They've all got access to grind. You saw it. Low-key had the match in hand. AJ came and blew it and ruined it for him. So they're going to get theirs next week. All three of them, Mike. All three of them, Ed, in the ring. But that's not all. You heard about it. The blood match next week. Don Harris, our head of security, was embarrassed out here by one of the disciples of the new church, Malice. So he came out and put the challenge of blood match. You're going to see blood guaranteed. Blood as red as my shirt. First one to bleed loses next week. Don Harris and Malice right here in Nashville in the blood match. And not only that. What else? We have heard the truth. Talking the talk. Ron the Drew Killings. Talking the dog. Putting out his views out there and bothering everybody with it. Well, Ricky the Steamboat Dragon has just gave him a title shot with Ken Shamrock. So next week we're going to find what he's really all about. Can he walk the walk? We'll find out. I'll tell you what, that is NWA TNA. It is the greatest. Go to the website. We got merchandise. We got hats, shirts. You got to get it. I'm telling you next week. It is going to be the most unbelievable show of all time.
Of all time, everybody. The most unbelievable show of all time. That show was probably horrible, but God bless Don West. The greatest pitchman in the history of wrestling. We're out of here. Thanks, Mike, as always. Callers, listeners, everybody in the studio. We'll talk to you next time, Wrestling Observer Live. I'm all fired up.